So, hello everyone. Um, let's do the Munsif staple. Hello Abdul Munaim. Hello Labasi. Hello Dominic, Jane, Junja, Julius, Kelechi, Manatalla, Fetch Boy Slim, Ricky, Ruqayya, and Steve. So let me share my screen. Right? Can everybody see it? Can everybody see my screen?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, great. All right, so this today's LeetCode is gonna be minimum window substring. So given two strings s and t of lengths m and n respectively, return the minimum window substring of s such that every character in t, including duplicates, is included in the window. If there is no such substring, we return an empty string. And the answer is going to be unique. So basically that means that we are given two strings, a string s and a string t. And the question is to return the minimum window or the minimum substring of s that includes all the elements from t. So let's take this one. Let's put it here. So basically, we need all of the elements inside of T to be in our little window. So let's take a window. So for example, this window, does it include all of the elements of T? No, it doesn't. It includes A, which is in T. It includes D when we don't care about that because it's not in T. Includes O, it includes B, which is in T, includes E, but it's missing C. So this window, as it is right now, is not like a viable window. If we include C, then this window is a viable like window, but we don't know if it is a minimum window substring because we still have to go through the rest of the string. So this is one, I guess, one variation or one, I guess, just example, right? We can go to another one that has all of the letters, right? This window, for example, has all of the letters. It has the same length as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And this one also has 6, right? So this is another candidate for a minimum window substring, right? The third, I guess, window could be this, right? It has B, it has A, it has C, all inside the window. So it doesn't matter the order. So basically, this last candidate has both B, has all of the letters inside of T. It has B, it has A, it has C, right? And it is smaller than the rest. It's smaller than our first candidate that has 6. Second candidate has 6. The third now candidate has only 4. So this is the minimum string that has all of the letters from T. So this would be our answer. So in here, the input was S and T, and the output is bank, as the one we have here, because it is the minimum window substring that includes A and B and C from the string. Same thing for like this. T and S are identical, so obviously the return is going to be A. And in this case, T has more letters than A, right? So the result is going to be empty since we are required to return an empty string if there are no minimum viable window substrings. And in this case, there is no way that we can fit all of the elements of T inside of S. So if the length of T is bigger than the length of S, that means that there is no possible way to find a minimum window substring, and that way we return an empty list. So they say both A's from T must be included in the window. Since the largest window of S only has one A, the return is an empty string. the constraint is that m is the length of s, n is the length of t, and m and n are, so they're not null or 0, and they're smaller than 10 to the power of 5, and s and t consist of uppercase and lowercase English letters. Okay, is the question clear? Is the problem clear? Does anybody have any questions about it?
Yes, it is clear.
All right, great. Now, understanding this question, does anybody have any idea on where we can start solving this? Since we know it is a move-in window problem, they typically have similar-ish solutions. So we can start basically by making our window, and as I did, to compare each window or each viable window, right? So for example, we started with C, and then we move on to the next candidate, right? And then to the next candidate, and we only, I guess, keep down or save the one with the minimum length. Does that does that sound good? So
Good. That
basically,
sounds.
yes?
I say yes. That sounds good.
Good. So basically, these window problems usually have two pointers, right? Either one at the beginning, one at the end, or both at the beginning. So let's have two. And these could be our start and end of our window, right? So we could start from the beginning, for example, and keep expanding or shrinking the window depending on what we need. So let's keep them here, for example, right? And let's work with our window. If we say that we start our window at the beginning of the string, for example, right? We can keep going until we have our first candidate. How would we know that we have our first candidate? We would know by having all of the letters of T inside of this window, right? And we can shrink that window because we could have elements in this. For example, our S could be starting by letters that are not included in T, right? So we keep shrinking this until the condition of T being inside of S is no longer valid. So in this case, all of the elements of T are included in S. We kept expanding our window until we included all of the letters in T, right? Now we were going to shrink the window until that condition is no longer valid. So in this case, if we shrink it once, then A is not included in this list, in this window. So that way we should be expanding again to find this A that we just lost, right? So we will keep expanding again and again and again until we have satisfied the condition of all of the elements of T are inside S. So in this case, we have B, we have C, and we have A. So we record this, right? And now we need to shrink to find a minimum that still has all of the elements of T. So for example, D and O are not included in T. That that makes our window much larger than it needs to be. So that is why we keep shrinking and shrinking. And each time we shrink, we record this, we save it, and we save the length until this is a viable one. And we shrink it again, but this B is not that important because we still have another B, right? So if we somehow had a map of this would still be valid because A, B, C are still included in this, even though we have lost one of the elements that are in T, right? So we can still keep going to go to E, right? And this is valid, and we keep recording it every time until we lose our C. In this case, this doesn't satisfy our our condition. Now, C is not included in the window, and it is necessary because it is in T. So now we need to expand again to find. So we always keep either looking for more characters if we're not satisfying the condition, and once we are satisfying the condition, we look to shrink our window to have the minimum string possible that has all of these letters. So now that we are no longer satisfying the condition, we can keep looking again. And now this is the end of the string. And we have found our C that we were missing. So we stop here and we shrink this again. O doesn't matter, D doesn't matter, E doesn't matter. And at B, we are recording at every step. So now that we are at B, we record this too, we save it, and once we move, it is no longer, the condition is no longer satisfied. So we cannot move any forward. So our, I guess our algorithm just stops here, and we return our smallest string, which was bank. Does it make sense? And could we like visualize it, or do we need to visualize it? Is it good so far? Does it make sense so far? Yes.
Yeah, it makes sense. You can continue.
Great, great. So
Come again?
now,
What
yes,
if the string T contain two letters, two of the same letter? Like if ABC was ABBC, we should
yes,
keep track of the count of the number of letters, right?
exactly. Yes, exactly. Count, like duplicates are like matter. So, for example, if we had ABBC, then this wouldn't be a viable like candidate, because we need to be looking
Yes,
for another C. So technically this would be our first candidate. And
yes, yes.
what do we do to keep track of that? Do you have any idea?
Um, we can use hash map like dictionary, or we can use just an array. Array would also solve it. I think so.
Yes, good. So basically, we would have hash map or a way to record the or a count
Yes,
of the letters in T, right? So we would have to have would have an A, B, and a C, and here it would be 1, comma 1. This would have 1, 2, and 3, right? And as we go through our window, we can keep track of, here we have included an A, right? So we remove an A from here and we keep going. We have a B, right? So we remove a B from here. Oh, that is not 2, that is 1 and 1. Yeah. And now once we have found a B, then we remove the B and we keep going. And once we find a C, then we have found a C. And the way we would find a way to make sure we know all of the elements of T are inside of our window. In this case, if we keep subtracting from our map, then we all of the elements in this map are going to equal 0. In that case, we would know that we are indeed, we do have a viable window, right? A candidate window. So we record this length. So in this case, it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We record this 6. We record the pointers that are here, right? This length, either we record the string itself or pointers to the start and end of the string, and then we start shrinking, right? Because we don't know if like we are able to find a a smaller window than this with these letters, right? So once now we have moved forward, so our left pointer has moved forward, then we have excluded the A. So in this case, we remove this. And now our hash map doesn't have all null elements. It has one element. So in this case, we need to keep going to try to replace the A that we lost here. Keep going. One, two, three, four. And here we would have like a -1, but it doesn't matter really because it's still not positive. So we keep going until now we have there is some background noise. Somebody
How would you know if all the elements are zero or not?
I believe it is easy to find if we have, for example, like a hash map. It would be just a dictionary, and you check all the elements of it. But I guess that would take some time. It's not very efficient. We could also keep a count of letters. So, for example, we have 3 letters here, so we can have like a count of, for example, 3. And each time we have a letter that is not that is inside of our hash map that is positive, you remove one, and now it is count equals 2. And you keep going until count equals 0. That means that we have all of the element of T inside our S. So that way we don't just go through our map each time to check. We have a count that is just saved. Does it make sense?
Yeah.
All right. So now that we understood this, I believe we can put together a little bit of pseudocode as a skeleton to what we'll have to do. So basically, we have two two actions that we can do. We either can stretch the window or we can shrink the window, right? And since we have these two pointers that point to the start and to the window, right? So our left pointer, our right pointer, we can easily go. We have two actions that we can do. We can either put the right one forward or the left one forward. So if we, I guess, increment the right one, that means we are expanding our window. If we increment the left one, that means we are shrinking the window, right? So we can loop through our S, right? And the condition would be if this doesn't go beyond the end of the string, right? And we can loop through it. Our condition would be that all of the elements of T are inside S, right? And we can go through that, basically expanding our window as long as we don't have all of the elements of T inside of our window. And once we do, then we start shrinking until we don't. And it keeps juggling between shrinking and expanding until you cannot expand anymore. So let's say, so 2 actions. We said expand, aka R plus 1. So the right pointer would go forward. So expand when we don't have elements from, or we don't have all elements from T in window. And then we will have to decide how do we check that. And then we shrink, aka L plus 1, when we do have all the elements from T in the window and we want to look for a minimum window. So once we are shrinking the window, we are saving the length of that window for future uses. So shrink n when all elements present while saving length or position of the the window. So basically we could have another pointer basically that points that this is our window, and once we find a smaller window then we can update those pointers. There are many ways of doing this as long as we understand the overall logic of moving through, saving each window, and shrinking and expanding until we cannot, until like we are at the end of the string. So to action, we expand when we don't have all the elements of t in the window, and we shrink when all of the elements present while saving the length. Okay, now how do we know when all of the elements from T are in the window? So let's say like we loop, right? Either like with a while loop, right? We loop and then either we expand or shrink. So we start by expanding, right? We can expand when we don't have all the elements from T in the window. So this is our first task. How do we know if we don't have all the elements from T in the window? I suggested a count, right? A count that starts or is initialized with the length of T, and each time we go through an element that is in T, right? You remove one, basically. So if it starts with 2, if with 3 in this case, we add a, and now it is 2, and then we remove a, so like this, and then we move forward. We have a d, d is not in T, so it doesn't matter. We go to o, o is not in T, doesn't matter. We go to b, now b will get removed from here, will also get removed from our count, and then we keep going. We have an e, e is not in T, we have a c, right? Now we remove c from here, and we remove our count, or we decrement our count. Now the count is 0. So this is how we know that we have all of the elements from T in our window. If the count is 0, if we don't have any more elements to look for in our string, the window has everything, right? So we start by expanding. And once we have everything, then we start by shrinking. Then we move on to shrinking. So we start by expanding, and then we move on to shrinking once count equals 0, right? Now once the count equals 0, it becomes the it comes the time to start shrinking, right? So we would almost have another loop after this to only shrink until the count is not 0 anymore, right? So while count equals 0, then keep shrinking. Now, as we keep shrinking, we're saving the length and position of window only if this current window is smaller than the previous window or the previous minimum window, right? So either we save this string, right? And we call it like the minimum string. And if we find another string that has a lower length than this one, then it's gonna replace it. Or we can have two pointers that point to the start of the string and the end of the window, basically the start of the window and the end of the window, and we record these and we keep comparing, I guess, the start, the end minus the start. So there are many ways of doing this. So we save the length and position of the window, right? Only if window is smaller than the minimum that we have calculated before, right? And then what do? We shrink. So by shrinking, we move L forward. So basically, it's a nested loop, right? An outer while loop that goes through the the expansion of the window, and an inner while loop that goes through the shrinkage of the window. Does it make sense so far? Yes? No? Any questions?
Yeah, I think it makes
Everyone
sense.
can say yes. Okay. All right. Now we can decide on a way to move forward, since there are so many ways to do it. But basically, let's keep this as a pseudocode, and let's have so basically we are initializing two pointers, right? So we're gonna have our left pointer, which starts from the beginning. We have our right pointer, starts from the beginning.
I have a question.
Yes, go ahead.
Uh, for the string T, it contains A, B, C, right?
Yes,
So the map would be A1, B1, C1, right?
exactly, yes.
So if there was a duplicate letter, like let's say B was 2,
Hmm?
and I started like
Duplicate,
decrementing the
let me duplicate in T or in our window.
duplicates in T.
Okay, so for example, B
Uh,
was 2.
B was 2, right?
Yes,
So I started decrementing while sliding through the window, right?
so like this.
Yes, until B was 0.
Okay, so
How
that's
how how would how would I know if I reach, like if I removed B, I removed B 2 times, I would know that B would be 0, and I found the letter, right? I found the correct count.
yes.
But how would I go back to my initial state? Like if I added another B, like for this substring you highlighted, I would I would start by shrinking from the left, right?
Uh-huh, yes.
How would I know if I like shrink it more after shrinking the B? What will happen here?
So first of all, we are gonna start
Yes, yes.
expanding
I
right
know
after.
the A. I know that there is an A. I just want
Okay,
to focus on the
let's assume we don't have any A, right?
yes,
And
yes, yes,
we start from here, right? And we keep expanding,
yes,
expanding until we have this B, and then we remove the
yes, yes,
B, right? We add a count of, so this, okay, at this point, including the B, the count is gonna be 0, right? And we will
yes,
have 2 removed from B, so this is gonna be 0, and then 1 removed from
right,
C, this is also gonna be 0, and we just remove this one. We don't need it for now. Right. now that we are shrinking 1, the count is gonna be +1, right? And we're gonna add 1 to this b. So for now, b equals 1. So we know that this b is the one that we need, the one that we just removed. So even
Okay,
if we
okay,
have
I got it, I
another,
got it.
let's see, okay. So the
So
count tells us, yeah,
so it doesn't matter how many duplicates. We
yeah,
just keep track of the count by incrementing and decrementing, right?
exactly, exactly. So the map, the
Okay,
t
okay.
map, tells us exactly which character we need. The count tells us overall.
Yes, yes, I got it. Thank you.
Hazim has written that he's not sure which problem we're working on. I'm gonna give you the link to the LeetCode. Alright. Now, we go back to the code. I hope that was clear enough. If anybody has any questions, you're so welcome to just interrupt me and ask your question. Alright, so now we initialize our 2 pointers, right? So our left and right that starts from the very beginning. We also need to make our map, so our t map. So hash map of t. Alright, we also need to find, we need to initialize our count. So the count starts with the length of t, right? So it starts with count equals length of t. And I believe we're done with the initialization. Yeah. Now we go to our first loop. I am gonna work on the method of just saving the initial, like the, so we would have a third pointer that points to the start of every window that we find, right? So if this is a window, then it records this, and then it records the length of the window, because we would have both our start and end at the start of end of the window, right? And that way we would keep track of which window is bigger, which window is larger or smaller in this case. So we would have a minimum start. So the start of the minimum window substring, and we would just give it like 0 in this case, and we would have a minimum length. And this is the length of our minimum substring. Now, we don't want to start it with 0 because we would want to look for elements smaller or than this minimum length, right? We could initialize it to like positive infinity, or we can just initialize it to the length of the string plus 1, because there's no way we would have a string that is larger than our s. So len of s plus 1. And these two are basically what's gonna allow us to check if our current window is small enough than the previous one. And if yes, this is what's gonna allow us to record it to compare it with the next minimum window substring. Hope that was clear enough. Now we can move on to our loops. So it's gonna be a while loop, right? Since now both our start or left and right are at the start, right? The while loop is gonna be if this right one is not beyond the limit, right? So once we are here, we don't want to keep going, right? Once we have found this and we found this one, we don't want to keep like going beyond that. So the element that we need to record, or the element that we need to, I guess, control, is the right, this right one, so that it doesn't go beyond the limits of our string, right? So while right is smaller than length of s, then what do we start with? What is the first thing that we said we're going to start with? Oh boy. So we start with expanding. Yes? Okay, so we start with expanding. Now, we only keep expanding as long as we have all of the elements of t inside of s. So what do we do after we expand once? Once we have expanded one element, right? So we check this element. Is it included in t, right? So in this case, we have 3. Is this element, so is SR, S brackets R, is it included in our t, right? If it is, so if SR in t. So if it is included in t, then we need to remove its count and remove or decrease its count from the map. Now, what if the count was already like 0? We've already found it before, and this is just a duplicate in S and not in T. So not only if S is in T, but the in the hash map, if it is bigger than 0. So if T map of, or we can just do like get SR, and we give it like a default value if it is bigger than 0. So we know that we are still looking for this element, right? If it is 0, that means this element doesn't matter because we're not looking for it. If it is 0, then it's already inside our window. We don't really need it. We don't count it. So once, if it is, so if this element is inside, so in this case is gonna be like this. So the first iteration would be at a the inside the hash map, a has the value of 1. So now we remove this value, right? We record as in like we have it in our string. So we do tmap of sr minus equal 1, right? We remove it from our map. But we also remove the count. So count minus equal 1. So we have one less element to look for. So now we only have 2 elements to look for inside our map, right? And we keep doing that until our count is 0. So count D
Shouldn't
doesn't satisfy. Yes?
shouldn't we add another check, like if T map of S of R inside the after the decrement operation,
After this,
before the count minus 1,
what do we do?
between these two lines, if T of map is equal or smaller than 0 or something like this. Like if let's say t map dot get s of r gave us 2 instead of 1, and we decrement it and it became 1. We
Okay,
shouldn't
yeah.
decrement the count here, right?
We'll decrement the count. If we have A, B, B, C, then the count is going to be 4, not 3. So we're still taking it into consideration.
I didn't get you.
Okay, so if we have T equal A, B, C, right? The
Yes.
count, the initial count is gonna be 4, right? If I go and I find this first b, and this b is 2, right? And I remove it and I make it 1, and I make this 3, we're still taking into consideration that we have 3 more elements to look for, one of them being b. So we're not losing the double. It is still 3 elements to look for, and this count will only be 0 once all 4 elements are included. In this case, in this way, a and double b's and a c, because the count.
uh, how how would you know that you added the right element? Like if I added uh, an A,
Give me an
there was a
example. Is
duplicate
this a good enough
A.
example, or do we change this?
Okay.
Give me an example and we can run through it one by one.
Oh, uh, I really don't have an example, but I will think of one, and if I found, I will
Okay, so the
tell
issue is that
you.
we used double letters in T, right?
Yes.
That's the issue.
I mean, yes, yes.
Is this a good enough example?
My issue is that you
Yes.
is with incrementing, not decrementing. Like, yes, here you decrement the count. Your initial count for this case will be 4, right?
Yes.
When I start to increment again, how would I know? Like, if I found in S, if I found double B instead of double A, I would the count will be 4, and we will not have all the letters of T, right?
We'll add it in the map. Once, for example, we found, so imagine it's A, B, B, C, right? And we
Mm,
remove A. This time we will
mm,
increase by 1, right? But we will also change it inside our map. We add 1 to
mm.
the one that we just removed. This way, we are recording that we still have this many elements to find and this exact element to find.
Okay, okay,
This count is only allowing us to not go through each and every element of the map. But we could just
okay,
completely disregard this and keep going through the map and make sure that each value is zero until
okay, okay,
all of the values is zero. If one of them is not, then you keep expanding until you find that exact element. And only then do you shrink the element. Now we're
okay,
just at expanding. Once we get to shrinking, and then we will have another one like this, where we check if this element is bigger than zero. And only then do we shrink.
okay.
Okay?
I
So
think
now,
I will get it while solving more, but I got you. Thank you.
okay, great, great. So now that we have or we have recorded our expansion, one thing that we need to do is to actually expand the pointer. So right now we only did it visually, but the pointer is still at 1. It should go to 2, right? So after doing this, the right one is gonna move forward, right? So this is our first expansion, right, from 1, and then we add 1 and we leave it added for the second iteration to b to d, right? And then it's not going to be valid for this, so we do not remove anything, right? We do not decrease anything, and we add like for r for this third iteration, and we keep going until we have satisfied all of these. Now once count equals 0, then we should start the operation of shrinking, right? We can do that inside of here. So while count equals 0. So this is our second loop. This is our inner loop that's gonna keep going as long as count equals 0. So once it is not 0, that means we have lost an element that was inside of T. So remember, if count is 0, that means all of the elements in T are inside our window. So that's what we want, right? And we keep shrinking, aka just finding the minimum viable string. As long as the count is 0, aka as long as all the elements of T are inside the window. So this operation that we're gonna do after this while loop is only to keep shrinking this window and keep recording each viable window as long as the count equals 0. So in this case, this is the first time with this window that we are going to shrink, right? So now while the count is 0, what do we do? Now L needs to move forward. But before we do that, we need to record this position that we are in, right? So the position L is at 0, R is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the length is 5 minus 0 plus 1, or just like 5, and it's going to be from 0 to 5, right? So the minimum start, so we're recording where, or we're saving where the window starts. The window starts at this pointer, the left pointer. So we can just say the minimum start equals this left pointer. Now we want to record the minimum length. So the minimum length equals the right one, the right pointer minus the left pointer. In this case it's 5. But we have one issue. We cannot just keep R minus L. We cannot just keep overriding the previous one, right? What if we have previously found a window this small, right? We do not want to just keep overwriting this. So we need to have a condition before this. And this condition is going to be only if this window is smaller than the window previous to it, or the window, or the length of the window. If the length of the current window is smaller than the length of the previous window, or the minimum window, right? Only if that is true, then we override it. So basically, we just keep looking for the smallest. So in this case, only if the current R minus L is smaller than the minimum length do we record our current position. Otherwise, our current window is bigger than the minimum window that we have, and it wouldn't matter. We don't need to record that one because it is bigger. So now that we have recorded our current position, right? We saved it. We need now to keep shrinking. We probably have more elements to remove. For example, if we had, come on, if we had like something like this, we would just remove E because we don't need it, and we keep going and saving until we have this our condition is no longer satisfied. So once we have recorded our current position, what do? We would have something similar to this. So I will just copy it and paste it here. It will need some modifications. So now instead of expanding, we will be shrinking, right? And we would do basically the reverse of this. So instead of doing left bigger, then we would have here left, and then the count is going to be incremented rather than decremented, and the map is going to be incremented rather than decremented. And this the left needs to be also incremented. But the position of this increment is wrong. Why? Because if we had a plus, so if we were expanding, I want to include. So I expand before including. So this C, so let's do it with pointer. I was at C, right? I would move to C, then do our operations on C. But in this case, I want to shrink, aka I want to remove A. In this case, I need to make our operation on the pointer in my position before moving forward. So I want to do basically, so in this case, when we are expanding, so I expand first, then I do my operation, but in here, we do the opposite. Basically, we shrink first, and then we do our operation. So let's put this one here. Okay, I believe that is now okay. And now once this whole operation is done, right? Once the count now is no longer 0, then it's gonna remove itself from this loop and go back to the outer loop where it's gonna expand again. So expand until you have everything, until count equals 0, and then once the count is no longer 0, or once the count is 0, you go to this loop, you shrink until the count is no longer 0, then you go back to expanding, and that way you keep expanding, shrinking, expanding, shrinking until you can't. Any questions? Okay, let's write this in better code inside of LeetCode. All right, so we have our left, we have our right, we have our minimum start. Am I still on? Okay. We have our minimum start. Oh God. I do keep getting disconnected. I do not know why. Okay. So we have our map. So basically we make an it. So for letter in T, or for L in T, so it doesn't get confused with the other one. And so T map of T equals T map dot get, so L, no, not T, dot get L 0 plus 1. So that way we increment even if we don't have it. Count is going to be a length of T. Okay, and now while the right one is smaller than length S, then we check if our current position is bigger than 0. If it is, then we decrement the count, and we increment R. And if the count equals 0, then we check if R is smaller than L, R minus L is smaller than the minimum length. If it is smaller, then we record the start, we record the length, and we increment L, and then we increment this, the position of S and the count. That means that we have, so in this case, if we shrink, and this element is in here, then we just add it to the count, and then we add it to here. I feel like this should not be here, so if it's just if a
I think you
student
can use none instead of zero.
is none.
Yes,
Why is that?
teamup.get,
Or we can just leave this.
teamup.get is
Okay, that's so this none.
yes.
Yeah, so basically we check if this is in the map. Yeah, that should work too. And then at the end, once we return, so now this return is gonna be almost an if statement, because if we're required to return an empty string if we have found no like possible candidates, right? We have initialized minimum length to length s plus 1, right? If we have found nothing, then this minimum length is gonna keep at this very like position, right? Or this very number. So we check if our minimum length equals length plus 1. That means that this has not been touched, aka we have found nothing, right? In that case, we return an empty string. Else, if we have not, and if this was changed, then we return our minimum start plus this length. So we return nothing if this minimum length equals this exact number, else we return s from our minimum start that we have modified to minimum start plus the minimum length.
Uh, I think the last if condition for the return statement, if teamup.get is not none, like if the element is in the dictionary, we should increase increment it, or right?
Yeah, if it is, I believe this should do it. I did it before using like this, SL in TMAP.
Yeah, I got. Mm.
I believe these two should be doing the same thing, but
Yes. I get it.
okay,
Okay.
we can just keep this for now. And I think that's it. Let's see if we have any issues with that. Okay, so string index out of range. Why is that? Or maybe we should do this after. Do it like this. I'm not sure this is gonna give us. Okay, yeah, it did not. So it really did not. Yeah, it's this one. So it gave us from the beginning until C, which is not correct. So basically, it did not. It only recorded the first one and nothing else. So let's check out why. So at first, let's let's print our tmap as we go. See if we find any issues with that. So it starts with this, and then it goes to B. Uh, yeah, so it should be left here. Left should be this one. Okay. So A. Can you please pay attention? There are a lot of background noise. Alright, so AD, and then we had this one. We started decrementing, we removed A, and we kept incrementing until we found another A. And I believe here is where things did not go the way they should. Okay. Let's have maybe this one, put it here. That's better. So we kept going until, so here it should stop at B. Nope, it should stop at N here, and then it should, why did it keep going until, oh. So it should keep shrinking more, but it didn't. Why? If anybody has any idea on why, if we have any bug in here, they're welcome to point it out. But I feel like something might be happening.
I think we can track the code one by one to see what happened in this specific case. Like we start by A until we go to the last letter in the string S. I know it's a long way, but
Yeah. So let's take this. Let's put these two to the side. Code. Nope. Here. Let's go through it one by one. So we have these two elements. And then we have this one, we have count 3, and then once we are in here, we have if the right, so A is bigger than 0, which it is, and we decrement this, we decrement the count, and then we move it right. Good. So the count is 0, it doesn't matter. So we will keep going until, I believe, this one.
yes,
0, 0, 0. That's when we would go inside of our count, of our while count. This one,
yes,
H, right? And so if this is smaller than what we had before, which it is, then we record it, and then what? We need to, so we need to save this first. So this one, so if A inside of here, then we add it. Yeah, So if it is inside, then we add it. And then we add the return. Then we shrink. And now the count is not 0. So we loop through the while again. And we check now left is here. So we
I think we should increment until the next A, right?
yeah, we would increment until the next A. You're right.
Yes.
So we did here. Let's go back to see this. So far so good, right? But we still stopped at O and not C. I'm not sure
Uh,
what's this last that I added.
I think, is there another print statement above this while loop?
I didn't catch that. Is there a what?
Another print statement above this while count equals 0.
Yeah.
Yes, delete this statement so we can see when when we enter the inner loop. Like if we enter the inner loop, this means we found a valid substring, right?
Let's do this. So
Okay.
this should give us the same. This one is gonna. So yeah, it went inside, but with an extra letter.
Yes.
That
The
means,
the the increment in R plus one. I think
but we need to add it.
yes, but we can increment the R after the inner while at the last line, maybe.
Mm-hmm. So I feel like we need to at least change some of this because this should be returned, like decremented, whether or not we are bigger than 0 or not. So we should have like an outer loop of if R is in T, right? And then we should do these two inside, but this one should be incremented even if it is bigger, decremented even if it is bigger than 0 or not. So if we have a double letter, for example, like this B, it should be like -1, so we can keep track of the double elements in this. So basically, you should here, and I feel like it should be the same thing here. If it is in map, and then only if it is bigger than 0, then we should, um, yeah, only
I
if
think
this is bigger than 0. Yes?
I think this still doesn't solve the problem of the extra letter in the print statement. I think this problem because the increment in the right pointer before the while loop r plus equal 1.
But we
I think we
didn't.
can put it below the while loop. Yes.
Okay, let's add this
I
first.
don't know if this will work. Okay.
Let's add this because I feel like this is necessary. We need to add it. Oh, not for this one, I guess. For right here. So it only count if we need extra letters. And then you said write plus equal 1 here.
With
So after the 1,
you should add another indent. Or yes.
inside?
Yeah, no.
Outside.
Yes. All right.
Still not good. But it did solve already.
Yes.
Okay.
It did found
But
the,
now,
the right string, but yes.
so it didn't keep going until the end. And because I feel like the +1 character was just because of this, to only visualize the first one, because at the first iteration, both of them are at 0. Technically, the string is 0. So I feel like it's only because we added this one, this +1. So if we did this, then yeah, the end one, the end string was banned. So I feel like this plus R could still be before, so that we finish the finish our string, or the window that includes everything before moving on. This is almost like saying now we have a window, but we still didn't expand it.
Okay.
So uh, oh, oh, nice. Okay, so yeah, this one basically adds the last letter. Good. Now we should remove these good statements. And now let's submit it. Nice. Okay. Um, are there any questions about this? Any issues? No, come on, Seth. I'm just sorry. Um, does anybody have any issues? If no, then I guess we are done. Okay. All right then. Thank you everyone um for joining, for interacting. It was fun debugging. And yeah, that was our first hard LeetCode. Minna said it was very easy, so if anybody has any questions, they can reach out to her. But otherwise, yeah, this is it.